And apparently this guy isn't the best driver in the world anyway, and had wrecked the SUV, and after he had run over his brother's body, and then sped off and then wrecked it and then was disappeared on foot. You can see they're going over it with a fine-tooth comb. In the meantime, on the campus of MIT, our Christina Hager is there. And Christina, we know from the display that has sprung up there, from the statement issued by the university, people are just heartbroken over the fallen officer there, Sean Collier.
Right, Paula, we're kind of in the depths, in the thick of the MIT campus. So we're surrounded by a lot of lab buildings and residence halls. So a lot of people don't know exactly where this happened, and they've been wandering up to us and asking us where it happened. Well, someone finally walked by and put a flag in the spot to show, to sort of create a makeshift memorial here. And it wasn't long after someone brought out a beaker with some flowers, and then someone else came by and brought this teddy bear. He said he didn't want to make a big deal, say anything on camera for our story, but he did want to just show that the community is grieving about this. Now, this, of course, where young officer, 26-year-old Sean Collier, was shot, and it was about 10:30 last night, and since there are a lot of dorms around, people heard some commotion, some gunshots, but they didn't necessarily know it was gunshots. And then it was soon after they got a text alert from MIT and were told not to, an email alert, told not to leave the building. They were in lockdown, and that lasted for about 6 hours. And then by the time morning came, they emerged to find out what had happened. This officer, one of their own, an MIT campus police officer, shot and killed to death. Shot and killed. Now, I did speak with his commander at the Somerville Police Department, where he used to work before he came to MIT. He said he is the nicest person you ever met. He had the biggest heart. He was an IT officer at Somerville Police Department for about 4 years. He was also an auxiliary police officer, a volunteer, and he had wanted to get a job with the Somerville Police Department, and the Somerville Police Department apparently liked him and wanted to take him on, but MIT called him up first, and so he took that job. At MIT, he was hired in January of 2012, and over at the MIT Police Department, there are signs of grief, a picture of a badge with a black band across it. We also went to the Somerville neighborhood where Officer Collier lived. It's Teal Square, a very nice neighborhood, and so a lot of neighbors said that they knew him, they knew his face. He didn't live with a family there. He was single, but they knew him from walking around, from jogging and going to stores. It's a nice, tight-knit community there. We're also learning that Officer Collier went to a training academy, the same training academy. It was in the same class with the MBTA police officer who was injured. So a lot of different law enforcement communities affected by this and grieving. And that's the situation. Of course, MIT here also grieving. Just a few minutes ago, MIT police cruiser drove by with 2 officers looking very somber, very serious, guarding the area. Still very quiet around here. I mean, the whole town and the whole area really is in lockdown. But as the hours pass and as people watch this, the developments on television, they're starting to come out a little bit more and starting to ask questions. And we don't have a lot of answers at this point, just a little bit of information about this officer people are so sad to hear about, another victim. So that's the mood here at MIT. Paula, Jack.
All right. By the way, CBS News is tweeting, this might interest you, that they are hearing that 7-Eleven robbery, which preceded the shooting of the officer, was not connected to these 2 brothers. So that brings up even more of a mystery. Why in the world they would waylay this officer in that cruiser, apparently watching traffic. He was in his cruiser right by where you are. And they came up, and according to Joe Shortsleeve, he was shot with a 9mm handgun, once in the head, 4 times in the chest. One asked a question, why in the world? You know, it's beyond belief. Apparently his gun never left his holster.
Well, as you alluded to just a few minutes ago, Jack, if they were simply just not very bright, they might have just assumed, because they saw the officer on his cell phone, they made the assumption that he might identify them, that he might know who they were.
Boy, it just doesn't make sense, though. If they didn't do that robbery, But they may have, you know, something you brought up a moment ago, that we're finding out that, in fact, they may have robbed people
they were
to get cash.
People.
So maybe they had done that and saw the officer and thought, uh-oh.
Right.
Boy, this just is just so puzzling, and it's so heartbreaking. These are, I mean, these are killers. Yeah. And if you had any doubt, we should call up that aunt down there that was raving about how they were being framed. If there was any doubt at all, how about the fact during the shootout that a pressure cooker bomb was thrown at police the same exact time, the exact type of bomb that was used in the Boston Marathon? Fortunately, the pressure cooker lid came off and therefore didn't kill a bunch of police officers.
And now more pipe bombs and explosives found in the apartment. Let's get to Jim Armstrong. He's the one who first spotted that car going by on the tow truck. Jim, we saw the video of the window shot out there. Have you learned anything more? What's going on?
Yeah, well, information is very slow to come out, Paula and Jack, so let's move carefully and cautiously here. I'll tell you only what I'm hearing from the Massachusetts State Police. I have an email out to a contact there to try to confirm some questions I have, but here's what we know so far. Earlier today, a green Honda Civic, 1999 model, there was a be on the lookout order issued for that green Honda Civic. The plates on that car, Massachusetts plates 116GC7. We were all told to be on the lookout for that plate. Roughly an hour or so ago, a flatbed truck from here in Watertown came past us here at the media staging area, spent roughly 15 or 20 minutes somewhere in the neighborhoods behind us here, and then exited. On the back of that flatbed truck was, in fact, a green Honda Civic. The plate's 116GC7. Right around that time, the Massachusetts State Police tweeted that they have recalled, they've ended that be on the lookout order. One important thing to point out, let me just read to you right from the Massachusetts State Police Twitter feed. So they say, please note that we have that car. We are no longer looking for it. The immediate tweet after that is a note to the media. Quote, earlier reports, statements that suspects were in a Honda CRV before the carjacking were incorrect. This is the Massachusetts State Police saying, quote, they were in the Honda Civic. Next tweet from the Massachusetts State Police. We apologize for the confusion. Wrong model of Honda. Suspects were in Civic, not CRV. Sorry. It's been a very fast-moving day. That tweet right from the Massachusetts State Police official Twitter feed, confirming again they were at the entire time looking for a green Honda Civic, 1999, with plates that matched the exact same make and model of car that was towed out of this neighborhood on a flatbed just about half an hour or so ago, with what very much appeared to be multiple windows, if not every window, shot out. Paula and Jack, that's the very latest from here.
Wow, and you spotted it, Jim. Thanks.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So that CRV was not used as a getaway car. Thank you, Jim. We'll be back to you. Let us know if you spot or see anything. Meanwhile, you probably want to know what's going on in Watertown behind Jim. It's behind closed doors. You know, it's in lockdown, as is other communities, Belmont and Cambridge. Let's get to Mike Scanlon, who's in Watertown. And I understand, Mike, that your house there in Watertown was searched just a short while ago.
Yeah, it was. Basically, the SWAT team came up and down the street, and they went up house to house, and they basically knocked on the door. They came in, and, you know, they tried to figure out what they were doing. They looked at me, they looked next door, and then they basically moved on. But I am right at about Porter Street in Watertown, and it's pretty much a crazy scene here. I've been stuck in my house since 2 a.m. this morning.
Well, at this moment, Mike, are you seeing anything, any activity which would indicate they may have spotted somebody, or is this just a continuing search?
I think, I don't know. My street's pretty much stable right now. It wasn't a couple hours ago. It wasn't about an hour ago. But I think pretty much right now it seems kind of calm here. But I have no idea what's going on.
Well, a lot of people don't, and I hate to say it, we don't either. We just know that there are an awful lot of police around you, probably several thousand. And the people who came to your door, then I'll let you go, by the way, Mike, were these like Army personnel, or are these police officers that came to your house?
They were Boston SWAT, Metro SWAT, the ones you're showing on TV right now, because I'm watching your channel right now. So they were the big trucks. They pretty much had big guns with them, and I didn't take the time to realize who they were. They just banged on the door and tried to clear out the houses, and they went up and down the street.
Well, you've been doing exactly what police have been asking people to do, Mike, and we appreciate it. And thanks for staying on the phone with us and letting us know what's been going on there. Nerve-wracking day for anyone who lives in Watertown or the surrounding communities. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Karen Anderson is, again, she's on the scene. We understand, Karen, that we're going to get at least one more update today from officials on what's going on.
We are, and that's expected from the state police colonel sometime between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. And I wanted to confirm for you the news that we had first reported a couple hours ago, that the bombers were not a part of the carjacking, as police have originally believed. And they said that picture was when they had stopped for gas before I'm sorry, let's do that again. The armed robbery was not the bombers. The armed robbery was not the bombers. As we had suggested to you, there were some conflicting stories there. So the armed robbery was not the bombers. The picture that you asked about, that was when they had stopped for gas before the carjacking. So I want to make sure that's clear. As you know, for everyone, it's been a long day, so I just want to make sure that's clear. We are, again, waiting to hear from the state police colonel. Expected that to be sometime between 5:30 and 6 o'clock. It has been, strangely quiet here, as it has been all around Watertown, except for just seeing the law enforcement continue to come in from all over the place. We've seen SWAT teams from Manchester, New Hampshire. We've seen people from New York, from Maine, no people from out of state, from all over the state. And the message remains the same from the police, asking people to stay inside. If you're in Watertown, Cambridge, Belmont, Newton, and Boston, asking to obey that emergency alert shelter and stay inside. Here's the state police colonel at our last update.
I want to begin by saying we are progressing through this neighborhood, going door to door, street to street. We're well over 60 or 70% of what we want to cover up there. We do not have any development to tell you in terms of that search up there. There has been no apprehension at this point. The second thing I want to talk about just briefly is this afternoon there will be a controlled explosion, if you will, by some of the explosive ordnance folks over in Cambridge. That's going to happen on Norfolk Street at a house that we have secured earlier today. It's done out of an abundance of caution. It's done for the safety of the law enforcement officials that are over there before they proceed with a search of that premises. So that will be happening this afternoon as well. Our plan at this point is we are going to continue with following up in that neighborhood. We've got several other new leads that just developed within the last few minutes, and we're working on that.
And the reminder to everyone, they're dealing with an extremely grave situation, a massive manhunt, as we've heard, going door to door. And the reminder of what we're talking about here, this is a man they call a terrorist. And if you remember from that video, he was the man that police said was actually putting a backpack down at the site of the second bomb spot. And that was the site, if everyone remembers, that 8-year-old Martin Richard was killed, along with so many other people injured. So as we think about, all of this caution here, this is who we're talking about. Someone who was actually seen on the video putting the bag down with that pressure cooker inside at the end of the marathon on Monday. Jack and Paula?
It is one of the most chilling images from this entire week, Karen, and a lot of people told us last night after we did a story on that. So thanks for the update there from the scene, and we know that state police are planning another update later on this afternoon. But Jack, I did interview a Boston firefighter last night who had been scrolling through images from the marathon and looking at a friend who was a runner. He had zeroed in on the fact that he recognized Martin Richard and his family in the foreground, and that it was so chilling to look, and just behind them, this man we see here on the right here was just behind them in the crowd on Boylston Street.
A search for a killer continues as many neighborhoods remain locked down. Boston is included in that lockdown. Paul Burton has been downtown, not far. In fact, he may be on Boylston Street. Let's find out what's going on. There's a Park Street station behind you. I recognize that. Still pretty quiet downtown, Paul?
Jack Paulette, very quiet. I'm on Park Street and Tremont Street. Behind me, you see a bus. This is the only bus we've seen all day, and it's full of police officers, transit police. The Park Street T-stop, the only ones allowed in those doors have been military police and Boston police. That's sort of been the story here. All MBTA stations have been shut down. It's been relatively quiet here all day. Most of the people that are out today are tourists, just coming to see what Boston's all about. Of course, they were in for the shock that you couldn't even believe because of what's happening today. Let me show you some shots of what was happening in downtown Boston. Downtown Boston, Post Office Square, an absolute pretty much virtual ghost town. Hardly anyone out. Most of the businesses were closed today. They remained shut down. That includes the entire transit system, buses, subway, and the train. South Station also at a standstill. Today, authorities asked all employees working in the city to please leave their offices and not stay sheltered in. Now, there weren't many people working in downtown Boston today, but once they got that message, you better believe they decided to go home. Here's what some of them had to say.
It's very eerie. It's frightening, because of the circumstances. So I'm looking around. Are there any unusual packages? It's like, it reminds me of 9/11 or a snowstorm, because these things, I was around for all those things. So it's just frightening, unsettling.
I get to work early. I was in at 6 o'clock while things were starting to unravel. And so now they said it's time to go. So I'm going.
And you can see police gathered here with their motorcycles. It's both military police and Boston police. You see a Metro cab here, right at the corner here. The taxis are up and running. That's the one thing that is happening here in Boston. Taxi cabs are up and running. In fact, those who are at their offices in Boston have been asked to call a cab and go home. Drive your own car or call a friend. Now is not the time to stay in their offices. They want people to leave their offices, and it's time to go home. That is sort of the situation going on in downtown Boston as of right now. Back to you guys, Jack and Paula.
All right, Paul, thanks a million.
Thank you.
Let's get back to Jim Armstrong. He's right there in Watertown trying to find out some more information on that Honda Civic that we saw go by with a number of bullet holes in the windows.
Yeah, exactly, Jack. Trying to confirm some more information about exactly what that was all about. But what we do know, thanks to some last-minute clarification from the Massachusetts State Police, was that Honda CR-V, the be on the lookout order for that Honda CR-V, with which we were all familiar earlier this morning, was corrected about an hour or so ago with an apology, actually, from the Massachusetts State Police. I'll read to you from their Twitter right now. We apologize for the confusion. Essentially, they were asking for the wrong model Honda. Media, they say, earlier reports and statements that the suspects were in a Honda CR-V before last night's carjacking were incorrect. They were in a Honda Civic. Just about half an hour or so ago, maybe a bit longer than that, we saw a Watertown-based flatbed truck take that same green Honda Civic right out of the neighborhood from behind me here just a short time ago. And the plates matched up. It is absolutely the same vehicle for which members of the law enforcement community were looking. And shortly after it left the neighborhood here, they canceled the be on the lookout order for that. In the last few minutes, let's get to the next part of the story here. CBS News has learned and obtained some still photos of that same vehicle inside the neighborhood here. We can take a look at those pictures here. Again, some severe damage to the windows of this vehicle, trying to get some sense of exactly what that damage is. Certainly the impression, I've seen many in the course of this job, many windows shot out of cars, unfortunately. And even though it did go by here pretty quickly, my photographer, a couple of other photographers got a look at it. Seems very much like the windows were certainly smashed and broken, possibly gunshots as well. The pictures taken by neighbors back here also show some sort of, it's a bomb identifying robot or some sort of machine that is able to get a better sense of exactly what's inside this vehicle without putting members of law enforcement at risk here. That's a development just coming in. Those pictures just obtained by CBS News a short time ago. We're trying to piece together exactly what happened with this particular green Honda Civic, but we do know it is currently in police possession, and as with so many elements to this investigation, Jack and Paula, now that it is in police possession, it presents a wealth of evidence to investigators. Yeah.
All right, Jim Armstrong, thanks. Come back as soon as you find out some more. People are very anxious trying to figure out when's this going to end. To be honest with you, we don't know. This is all unprecedented. It's unprecedented for police. It's certainly unprecedented for the news media. We're keeping on the air only because we've had so many people told to stay inside their houses. There's a killer on the loose. And we know that one police officer was killed by these two last night. A T officer was gravely wounded. Operation for much of the day is out, but is still in serious condition. So that's why, and that's why we're talking. I mean, when things start happening, as we noticed last night at 10:30, 10:40, when they start popping, they start happening in a hurry. If you get a chance, some of you haven't seen this, and let me give you, those of you in the control room, if you can still queue up that the scene last night. Now, this is, let me set this up a little bit, but it gives you an idea how serious all of this is. They had hijacked a Mercedes SUV. The guy was eventually let out at the Shell station. These guys take off. Well, it so happened that SUV had a low jack in it, one of those, so they were able to, I guess it was a low jack.
Some
it could
sort
have been
of trafficking device.
Could have been, what's the OnStar, could be any other thing. So they were able to figure out, okay, let's chase them. And that's when the T officers got involved. That's when Richard Donahue was shot in just a few moments. Let me just continue setting this up. They take off. During this chase, some shots are fired. Apparently, the SUV gets out of control. They can't go on. Police then have them. At least they thought they did, and then this happened.
There's explosions and gunfire going on down the street.
And two things we know during that gunfight, which is so terrifying to hear breaking out in the middle of the night, they threw another pressure cooker bomb out of the car.
Well, actually, somehow it was thrown.
And then when the one brother, Tamerlan, had been shot and killed by police and was there, leaving him with both gunshot wounds and some blast injuries as well from, we assume, that bomb, the younger brother here, Jakar, took the car, drove over his brother's body in order to escape. And then crashed that car once again, and has never been seen since. So
at least we know of.
That we know of. And so this is the tense situation now. We're coming up on some of these police officers the last 18 hours. You can imagine the exhaustion, the adrenaline, the tension they've been put through, because none of these officers have any idea when they're going to come upon anything, when they might encounter this young man. And certainly he is in a desperate state of mind. I don't think it's a huge leap to say that. And so you're really going to feel for these brave officers who are out there with all of the residents of these communities in their homes with the doors locked. Those police officers, state police, FBI, SWAT teams, they are out there putting their lives on the line because we don't know, excuse me, we don't know what kind of weapons or more explosives this 19-year-old young man might have on it.
Yeah, in their apartment they found explosives, they found pipe bombs. And by the way, again, if you just joined us during that shootout, which you heard a few seconds ago, remember the young woman who was taking that video last night said she heard an explosion and gunfire before things really opened up. They think that explosion was another one of those pressure cooker pipe bombs, identical to the one that was the ones which were used at the marathon. That the guy on the left, the older brother, throws that towards police. But as he throws it, the pressure cooker lid came loose. And when it came loose, when the explosion took place, it worked. Instead of blowing apart the whole pot, it just blew up into the air. So anyway, that's the situation.
And knowing all of that, this morning, that's why Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis said that this is a very grave situation. He knows that he believes these are terrorists. And to quote the commissioner, we believe they are here to kill people. And clearly they haven't hesitated to do that. Now we have 4 people dead since Monday afternoon. We have many, many people gravely injured, recovering in the hospital, and now this latest MBTA police officer, Richard Donahue, recovering from surgery after his injuries overnight. So it's been a frightening situation, and we continue to stay with you because we have our reporters dispersed throughout Boston, Watertown, monitoring the situation at the Arsenal Mall there. In Watertown on Arsenal Street, just a massive, massive number of vehicles and police officers assembled there for any incident. And you know that they wait, as we continue to look at these live pictures, for any word that this young man is spotted in an alleyway, a basement, hiding in some building, some alleyway. Someone is bound to discover him eventually or see him trying to work his way through one of these neighborhoods.
Here's what they've been able to find out. They know that these 2 brothers were brought to this country by their father probably at 2000 or 2002, somewhere in there. The father worked as apparently a car mechanic in Cambridge. Eventually, he went back to Russia. There are other family members here, and some of the family lived in Maryland. And one of the uncles of these 2 terrorists spoke with TV reporters this morning.
Thank you very much.
My name is Ruslan Sarni. I want to speak on behalf of the entire Tsarnaev family. What happened and what we heard this morning about people who associated, or I would say by family associated. I want to start, and I will finish with that. First, the only purpose here is just to deliver our condolences and to share grief with the real victims here. Those who've been murdered, those who've been injured. This boy, this Chinese girl, this young 29 years old girl, I don't remember Casey. I just been following this. I've been following it from day one, but never ever would imagine that somehow children of my brother would be associated with that. So it is atrocity. We're devastated. We're shocked. Again, I don't know. This family does not know how to share that grief with the real victims. That's pretty much.
When was the last time you saw them?
I don't know. We've not been in touch with that family for a number of years. Pardon me?
Did they live here?
No, they never lived here. They never lived here.
When's the last time you saw them?
Last time I saw them was 2006. That was, I'm sorry, December 2005.
Did you ever know them to have any ill will towards the United States?
No. I never knew it. Even if I had a guess or something, I would just submit them myself.
What do you think provoked this?
Being losers, hatred to those who were able to settle themselves. These are the only reasons I can imagine of. Anything else to do with religion, with Islam, it's a fraud, it's a fake.
Did they have any military training at all?
No, as much, again, I've seen them when they were kids.
And any experience with guns or?
I don't know. Sir, we've seen them only in 2005. Huh? We're Muslims, we're Chechens, we're ethnic Chechens.
Do you have any kids who were close to them?
Do you think that they got radicalized in any of the forces in that area?
If that happened, most likely. Somebody radicalized them.
Right.
But it's not my brother, who just moved back to Russia, who spent his life bringing bread to their table, fixing cars. He didn't have time or chance or anything option. He's been working. That's it.
Can you move closer to the mics? Hold on.
No. I've not been.
Can you move up? Take a step forward.
I've not been in touch with my brother. No, I don't know anything about that. Again.